I'm Andrew, and today we're diving deep into what makes Highrise such a unique and impactful community for growth-minded professionals. If you're here, you're probably wondering if Highrise is right for you. Maybe you're curious about how our members have transformed their careers, or you're considering whether the investment in both time and money is truly worth it. Well, you're in the right place. In this video, I'll be speaking with one of our members who's going to share their personal Highrise journey, how they've navigated the challenges, seized the opportunities, and seen real results. Whether you're concerned about the cost, worried about fitting this into your busy schedule, or just unsure if Highrise can help you reach your goals, you'll hear firsthand how others have tackled these very same questions. So stick around, let's find out if Highrise can help you and take that next big step in your career. Hey Dave, so thanks again for joining us. Maybe could you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi Andrew. Hi everybody watching. I'm Dave Lane, and I've gone through the Highrise program, at least the first 6 months of it, and it was pretty special. How I got here is essentially I am in the e-gov space. What I do is I help governments, local governments primarily, to use software that we produce to make processes work better for both the staff and then those in the community who are applying for permits, licenses, and things like that. And so my track has been to really become customer focused. And so when Andrew reached out to me, to talk about the Highrise program, I was about to enter, I didn't know it at the time, but a transition in my career. I was moving from what's called a solution consultant, it's kind of on the sales side, demonstrating the software to government agencies. And I wanted a longer term view of the life cycle of a customer. And I was very interested in the customer experience, long life cycle. And just as I was joining the Highrise program, I was actually transitioning into a new role. So the timing was great.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. Can you maybe tell folks a little bit about how long you've been a Highrise member?
Yeah, I've been a Highrise member, I guess, just over 6 months now. I went through the 6-month program, the cohort, where every 2 weeks I'd meet with my team and our coach, and really throughout that whole process, it was happening as I was going through my career.
And I'm curious, how did you first hear about Highrise?
Actually, I was fortunate in that. You found me. I was on LinkedIn, and I guess I was been updating my profile to, in advance of, I was looking for a change. And so Andrew, you pinged me, and it was part of, I guess, an effort to find folks like me who were looking for growth. And so that's how I found out about Highrise. But of course, once I learned about you, I dug into your website. I actually spoke with someone who had done the Highrise program 2 or 3 times, actually, 15-minute phone calls, just to see, what was their experience like. This wasn't an overnight decision that I made. I didn't just kind of say, oh, Highrise, yeah, I want coaching, let's do it. I thought long and hard about it. But it was something that I had always wanted to do, which is coaching, and Highrise seemed like the right thing for me.
And I'm curious, that's actually a good segue. What did you think coaching was before joining Highrise?
I had short experiences, on the edges of what coaching is. I had a couple of folks who were, well, for example, one gentleman was doing a program of becoming a career coach, and he offered to give me some sessions for like $20. And that was really just an opportunity for me to tell him, here's what's going on in my life, primarily my career, job related things. And he would talk to me about it and help me frame it, give me some suggestions on how to think about what I was going through. And then another woman, I was in a program, we were kind of working on something together, and she happened to be a very experienced coach. And again, it was just like, what am I going through? And then someone with a lot of experience and tools could help me walk through those things. So for me, I thought coaching was simply kind of a mentorship type of a relationship with someone. And that's not exactly what Highrise was. It was a lot more than that.
And, you mentioned that you spent a lot of time thinking about, this wasn't like an easy decision, right? And it's not for a lot of folks, right? And that's one of the reasons why, we're here creating this content to help show folks what others have done and what their thinking process was through the process and what their results were. I'm curious, like, what were you most skeptical of before joining Highrise? I assume you were skeptical of some things, right? Because you said it took me a while. And skepticism is completely natural and normal. Um, but yeah, what were some of the things that you were most skeptical of before joining Highrise?
The biggest industries in the world is professional development, and helping people with their dreams or with their problems. And so there's tons and tons of options, many of which are not very good, some of which are probably scams. And for me, it was really important to know what I was getting into if I was going to invest real money into it. So uh, I'm not sure if I would say skepticism per se. I mean, initially I learned about Highrise, checked the website, saw that there were folks on LinkedIn who had done the program, so I could see, okay, there's real people here who can sort of vouch for it, at least saying that they did the program. And so that I would say was the main thing for me initially. And then I had to make the decision, is this going to fit into my life? Is this going to fit into my budget? Is it an investment that's right for me right now? And that's where some of the the more deeper conversations that you made available to me as I was making my consideration, that's what helped.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And I'm curious, how did you pay for Highrise? What did your company help? Was this an expense that you sort of took on individually? By the way, just between us and folks will edit this, but I know how you paid. I'm just I'm asking the
No
question.
problem.
Yeah.
The way that I pay for it is actually I have a small stipend for continuous learning at my company. It was really a small amount, and the rest I paid for essentially out of pocket. I had to have the discussion with my wife. We share our finances. I got 2 kids. Financial decisions are important to make as a team. And that, I would say that was, a big part of my consideration is the time right, and are we in the right place to do it? But we did do it. And, the thing is that it's an investment that's not a one-off. It really was an extended period of time, and that enabled me to sort of see the slow growth. In some cases it was fast growth that made the investment worth it. But yeah, indeed, with a small bit of help from my employer, and certainly support, emotional and moral support from my employer, they really love that I'm doing it. I went right to the top level to say, hey, there's this guy in the company who is investing in himself to do better for us. And that kind of strengthened my resolve too, because I knew that while they didn't have the funds at the time to invest in me in that way, they certainly took note of it, and it is certainly going to help me perhaps grow my career at the same company.
So yeah, so you know what? That's kind of interesting. A lot of people kind of like run into this like chicken and egg problem, which is like, hey, I'm not getting enough of what I need from my existing company, yet at the same time I may only decide to do this if that company where I'm not getting enough what I need is going to pay for it, right? And then kind of like reinforces that negative loop. And it sounds like you made a decision that helped supplement it.
Absolutely. A lot of folks in my cohort that I worked with over the past 6 months were going through career transitions as well. And their decision was, hey, I want something new. I don't necessarily see my future with this current company or arrangement. I want to change industries entirely. Whereas for me, I love the company that I work for. I want to, be even better at the company. There's opportunity for me to grow there. And also, I want to be well positioned for opportunities that come up within that company. Because I would hate to get to a point where the company outgrows me and I'm no longer of value, because then those opportunities go away. And then, while certainly I've gone through transitions of switching companies, switching careers, it's a lot easier and less expensive to grow your career at the company you are with. And that is another kind of consideration here, is that if I'm going to invest, that can not only enable opportunities for more growth, more money, but it could also help me avoid some expenses, not just monetary expenses, but also the emotional expense of, hey, I didn't succeed in my job because I didn't keep up with my growth.
And I'm curious, more specifically, what were your goals when deciding to join Highrise?
For me, coaching was very appealing, and actually, coaching for me, even though I want to build my career, I love work, I love growing, personal growth, but it's very much intertwined with emotional growth, relationship growth with my partner, with my kids even. And I had done therapy, counseling. I'd had, as I mentioned before, I've done sort of professional growth, taking courses, etc. And I wanted something that was now more focused, instead of maybe the on and off surface level things of let's address this small issue one by one. I wanted something that was more holistic, and coaching just sounded like the path for me at this point. It's like I've learned a bunch of stuff. I got a bunch of tools and tricks. What's something that's more holistic that can take me to the next level? And my goal really was to grow as a person, so that I could be more present and apply that to my growth in my career.
And is there a specific instance of something that Highrise helped you with that you'd care to share with folks watching?
Absolutely. One of the big things that I got out of Highrise, and there's 3 or 4 major kind of shifts that I made throughout. I would say it culminated with the relationship I had with my manager. And after I changed roles from solution consultant to customer success manager, I had actually spent a good 8 to 10 months working with our executive VP of customer experience. She's a customer success expert. And I was really looking forward to working with her for the next year, learning from her. But shortly after I got into the role, she's just growing the department massively. And so she said, Dave, I've got to get another manager in here. I know you wanted to work with me. We will continue to work, but we've got someone now in between. So I had a new manager within about a month of joining. However, while I did know my new manager, because she did come from within the company, I wasn't used to her working style. So in these meetings I was having, I'd come from someone who was very positive, very gregarious and supportive, to someone who, while I do like very much, she's very positive as well. She's very direct, very detail oriented, and my initial new relationship as a manager to subordinate, so to speak, was of fear. I thought that she was judging me. I thought that she was disappointed in me. And fortunately, I was in the middle of the Highrise program where I was learning a lot about who I am and how I can relate to how others are. So in the midst of this, I was able to say, wait a second, why do I feel this way? What are the things about me that are driving me to feel perhaps a little fearful or worried? And it was, okay, I'm an S on the DISC quadrant, right? I'm someone who prefers stability. I want people to like me. Whereas I was able to then do a quick assessment of my new manager and say, oh, she's a C. She likes consistency. She's very detail oriented. She's not judging or disappointed. She just wants more details. She needs to know that everything is in its place. She wants to understand why it's happening that way. So I was able to pivot within the first couple of weeks of this new relationship and say, wait a second, I just need to be really well prepared for my meetings. I need to be confident in those interactions. And since then, she has actually given me extremely positive feedback. She gave the feedback to my skip level, who was my previous manager, said Dave is doing fantastic. In fact, at the senior leadership gathering that they do every quarter, Clady was my skip level, brought Emily's feedback to the higher ups and said, Dave is the strongest member of the team. And I'm on a team now with 2 very experienced customer success managers. And I attribute that to the ability to be confident, detail oriented, and meet my manager's expectations. So that was a big deal for me, that
Mhm.
I could have gone down a rabbit hole of fear and worry and cowered away. But when I understood who she was and how I fit into that relationship, it just turned completely 180.
Got it. And it's interesting too that you mentioned this because even though you had a great manager before, you know, we don't want to leave our development tied to our managers, right? Because we don't know what might happen, right? They may
Mhm.
have another great opportunity elsewhere. They may move to a different team internally. They may, all these things may happen. And so, as we all know from all of our experience, there are good managers, and then there are not so good managers, right? And we don't want to leave our careers based on this like lottery system, right? That someone assigns to us. We want to be independent of that. I think the other interesting thing is like had this had your the reason the new manager came in been the catalyst for you finding this help, it would have been maybe it would have been too late,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Because if you said, "Oh, hey, I have a new manager, I got to figure out how to to work with them better. It's a little bit different how I worked with my previous manager," and then you went out and you set out to go and find these resources. Take you a couple of weeks to do that. It would take you a couple of weeks to get your coach up to speed. It would get you a couple of weeks, but because you already had this in motion, you were able to adapt quickly.
Coaching really is a proactive, forward-looking endeavor. You don't. It's similar with networking. They always say the best time to network is when you have a job,
Right.
not when you're looking for one. And similar with coaching is, I knew that my career was going to change. I wanted to make the change, but I wasn't in dire straits. Now, absolutely take on coaching and work on yourself when you're in a transition. Like, that's an excellent time to be doing it. But if you're not there yet, it's an even better time. It's because you're preparing for those moments. And as you say, you could be in a position where the change happens, and now you're well prepared because you've been.
Makes sense. I'm curious, what are you working towards next now?
What I'm working toward next, well, first of all, I am still learning the role that I'm newly in. I'm in it about 3 months or so. So it really happened during the Highrise cohort that I transitioned. The most recent conversation I had with my manager was to start talking about what is my growth trajectory? What do I want? And it was actually an easier conversation to have than if you had asked me 6 months ago, what do I want next? Do I just want more money? Yeah, I would love to have a higher salary. That would help a lot of things. But that's not really what I want. I want purpose in my role. I want to be happy to go to work each day. And that comes from finding your place that suits your strengths and interests. Now, defining those strengths and interests can be difficult if you don't know yourself very well. And this is where Highrise has actually helped me to have that conversation. So instead of saying to my manager, hey, in a year, here's where I'd like to be. I'd like to be a manager of other people because that's a typical next step. And I'd like to have a higher salary. I was able to start a conversation and say, well, hey, manager, here's what I know about myself. I love working with customers. I like helping them succeed. I like the incentive of turning a red customer, meaning they're at risk, into a green customer. And I also like being at the decision-making table so that I can inform and be a part of exploring the future of the company. Now, it's kind of abstract to say those things, but what it's doing is it's helping me and my manager frame that discussion over the next few months to say, okay, what direction should you go? So actually saying things like, here are what I like and what I can contribute to in a sort of abstract way, as opposed to just make me a manager with a higher salary. That could be a dead end where I'm disappointed and never happy because now I've got all these people I have to keep happy. And did I actually get the raise? No, I am crafting a path. And that's because I know myself a lot better now. And I also know other people a lot better, so I can communicate with them in a better way. So when I speak to the future, I say, I would like to be helping more customers and keeping this company strong. And I want people to notice that I'm doing it. That's actually what I want. And that's, I think, now I can achieve that.
And I'm curious. I just have a couple more questions about sort of different parts of Highrise now. Curious, what has been your favorite part of the high-rise community?
All the people in my cohort were cool. It's nice to be in a group of people who they share the value of open-mindedness, curiosity, wanting to grow, and that typically leads to productive conversations, interesting conversations, and shared growth. So that I liked a lot. And I, even though we have shared values, or at least the ones that really resonate with me were shared amongst the group, it was also a very diverse group. I could tell that was intentional, that the Highrise team looks for a mix of folks who will match each other, but also bring a mix of experiences and needs. One of the models, and in fact, the thing that I also like the most about Highrise is the series of tools, models, and structures that you brought, which I'll talk about in a second. But one of the models, the DISC method, which says where are you, in terms of kind of who your character is. We weren't all the same at all. In fact, it was probably evenly matched across the spectrum of the DISC style, which was fantastic, because not only did I have a teammate or two who I could, say, hey, sure is interesting being an S. Hey, it's tough. But then I could say, well, shoot, my wife is just like a D. So I was talking to Ds in my cohort, and I was learning from them how they think, because it was just a different environment to be talking about these things. And I was actually able to take that back, have a better conversation with my wife, meet with C's, have a better conversation with my manager, meet with I's, and say, hey, this, it's so great to have someone like you on the team. I need to find more of you on my team and utilize that in my day-to-day. So two things. Well, really, the key thing is the mix of folks that are in the cohort. And there's not too many. There's like about 10 or 12. So it's manageable. But also you're bringing in frameworks to help you engage with not only the cohort, but then moving out into life to not only know yourself, but to know others that you're working with.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And this is hard to describe to folks. A lot of people will do like a DISC assessment at work, or they'll do a Myers-Briggs or an Enneagram or any one of those. And I think where most organizations stop is like, okay, kind of feels like a work horoscope. This is my style. This is how I work, and that's sort of where it ends. And I think what you're saying to the folks listening and watching is it's not enough to just know who you are. That's one half of the equation, or maybe even less than half the equation. But it's being able to identify the styles around you. And so instead of having to playing a guessing game at work, doing this, you can get to know somebody who's like the opposite style.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I like the Highrise structure, meaning that over a long period of time, you're meeting every 2 weeks, and you do that 10 times, and all of a sudden half of a year has passed. And that's great, because not only it's at an excellent pace, I found. It's not, you got 1 week to learn everything, and now you're going to be a new person. Like, we all know that doesn't work. It's too much for your brain to take in. And then once the week is over, the following week goes past, and you probably remember that you did that training. So to have it over the course of 6 months, 10 sessions, and by the way, in between each of those sessions, you're meeting one-on-one or one-on-two with your cohort members to have just more informal conversations about what you're learning, what you're going through. You're retaining the information and the lessons that you get. You're practicing. And the other thing about the program I liked was that there's a series of I'll call them frameworks, tools, and methods of learning and thinking that are well paced throughout. So you start by kind of learning a bit about who you are from a general perspective, I'll call it. This is the DISC method, as well as, of course, as the baseline is the coactive leadership, which is we haven't even talked about yet, of the different ways of viewing how you and others can be be present in different scenarios, so that you can be that leader. And we can talk about leadership, because what I also learned is that leader isn't just that person at the front telling everyone what to do or inspiring people. There's tons of ways to be a leader. However, going through it all, you also learn what's inside you that you may not realize are sabotaging your efforts to succeed, have good relationships. These are your saboteurs. So halfway through the program, you realize, oh my gosh, there's these kind of personalities inside of me that are working against me, even though they're trying to protect me. And then you get into there's a framework called conscious leadership, which is to say, where am I right now in this exact moment? Am I above the line? Am I below the line? This line being this really simple framework of how am I thinking about myself in this situation? And is it productive or is it destructive? And I actually had a moment just 2 nights ago where I was talking with my wife. I was explaining, how I feel, and I was really down in the dumps. I was being pretty negative and saying, "Oh, this is hard. I'm never going to get better at that." And I just like a switch happened when it occurred to me that I hadn't been thinking about the line, and in that exact moment, I had a body shift. I just felt myself change, where I was like, "Wait a second." And I was immediately able to start looking at her and say, "I really appreciate this about you. And I'm actually really optimistic about this thing that I was just complaining about." And it ended the day on a very positive note. And if that was my one takeaway from Highrise, to know that there's this simple model that can change the way you view your life and your work, it's phenomenal. Now, it all came from practice. And as I said, I was talking for probably an hour before I made that switch, because I'm still new at this. But the practice of 6 months of learning what these methods and frameworks are is really going to last now, because I practiced it and I can take that with me into the future. Everyone is in a different situation, making their different considerations, their different home life, different work life. And so the advice I give is this: relax a bit. This can be a big decision. It can be a great decision for you. There's not necessarily urgency here. The advice I can say is that there are a lot of people who have gone through the Highrise program that you can speak with. They're very generous with their time, not just people who work for Highrise, but people who've gone through the cohort. I had 3 separate phone calls with a alumnus of Highrise, and they're just, yeah, that's right. Exactly. Do your due diligence, and it's going to be worth it. And if at the end of the day, I just can't do it, don't beat yourself up, right? And you can come back around. I mean, I spent probably 4 months on and off, didn't know if I would do it or not. I was waiting to know something about my career before I made the decision. And these things come and go. However, if you stick with it, you will come to the right decision. And I made the decision to spend a fair amount of money personally, but I'm already reaping the benefits from that because I took it seriously. And you take things a lot more seriously when it's your own money, for one thing. But if you go in with, even if you're not sure what you're doing, when I went into the Highrise program, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to achieve. I had a good sense. And early on, they're like, okay, let's hammer this out. Let's figure out what you need. And then you can carry that with you. And you're going to have not just the coach, but multiple guides taking you through this. And if you have challenges along the way, I can tell you I had plenty of challenges that I had amazing support from the team that I had. So, while I would recommend doing your due diligence, don't be hard on yourself as you're making this decision. There is a lot to gain from taking on a program such as this. Yes, I have all those things. I have, relationship. I have kids. I have schedules to meet, and I was a bit wary of that going into it. It is a time commitment. How I dealt with it, first of all, I had support from Ilana at Highrise to help decide when's the right time to join a cohort, because you actually have options at Highrise for different time zones or different times of day. And I was slotted into one that worked for me. So that was super helpful, first of all. And second of all, I found that it wasn't as time intensive as I feared. Essentially, every 2 weeks, I would have, the 1.5 hour session. And then in between the sessions, I would meet for half an hour with one of my cohort companions. And also there were very light but targeted homework, we'll say, where it's what was your reflection on the last cohort session that you had, or the last meeting that you had. And there'd be 3 questions, and I would take the time to do it. But that time, especially if I did it pretty soon after the cohort meeting, it didn't take very long at all. So the time investment was shockingly less intensive than I anticipated. And I think that's because of the structure of the program, where you spread it out over half a year, and so you're able to absorb pretty hefty concept because you're given the time and space to apply to your life in between. So 6 months is like, oh, crazy, that's a long time. But no, it's actually spaced out very nicely. After a week or two, it was very much a part of my routine, and it wasn't too intensive at all. I had advice one time about Highrise coaching, which is to view it as the same way you might view going to the gym. It's something that it's hard to fit in your schedule. Like, let me tell you, I am struggling to get the gym in, and part of it is motivation. But if you find the time to practice something that is beneficial to your mind and body, it becomes a lot easier to do, and the benefits are huge. So you might be concerned about fitting it into your schedule. First of all, as you can talk to the folks at Highrise about, is there a way that fits in the best? And then you end up shaping your life around it somewhat effortlessly, because you find that it fits in there, and you're getting so much benefit that actually, just like going to the gym, if you become consistent at it, you start really wanting to go, and it becomes a need to have. You just go because you can't do anything else without it. It's so energizing, and that's what I would say. Yes, it's always tough to make that initial move into something that's going to be a bit uncomfortable, but it will become a part of your routine and very beneficial to everything else that's going on. Making a decision to go into something like Highrise for me was a big deal. I spent, like I said, I think I spent 4 months with it on the back burner, sometimes, having conversations, and, it is a big decision, and you should, like any investment, take the time to make a decision that works for you, know what you're getting into, reach out to the people on the Highrise team to learn more, take some of their free workshops. I did 4 or 5 of them to see what the value was. I could sense that, it was a valuable workshop, but I also knew that if I made the investment, I would get 100 times more value, because it would be more personal and direct, and lots more resources. Obviously, look at your budget and ensure that you're not going to put yourself in the hole by doing this. But keep in mind that when you invest in yourself, that's how you're going to get out of a hole that you might be in, right? Or you can avoid going into the hole because you made that investment. So, we all have to make these decisions. And if it's something that you're still looking into, you're still curious about, hey, maybe the time is right. Maybe it's time to stop exploring and make the decision. Sorry, ask the question again. Accountability. I took some time to understand that word a few years ago, to be accountable. So let me just define it as I understand it. When you say you're going to do something, particularly these days, it's easy to not follow through because there's so many options, there's so many ways to hide from any responsibility. But to say you're accountable to yourself, to your goals that you've committed, it can be hard to follow through and say, I said I was going to do it, and you can count on me to follow through. This is actually where the Highrise program comes in most beneficially, is you've got a support team that at the beginning, you define what your goals are, you continue to shape them and confirm that those are the ones that are going to work for you. But every couple of weeks, in fact, every week, if you include the sessions you have with your cohort one-on-ones, you will be reminded and supported in achieving the goals that you set out, so you remain accountable to them. I just continued speaking, just in case.
Okay. Actually, let's maybe ask that one more time. Sorry, I got disconnected.
Sure.
How does Highrise help you stay accountable to your goals?
It's easy to not follow through these days. I think in the world that we have, there's so many options, so many distractions, and that can be easy. There's sometimes the easy way out, but the easy way out, I find, sometimes can be the negative way out. You end up getting drained. 2 years pass, and there were things you wanted to do, and you start to feel like, oh, I didn't do those. I'm no good. I'm never going to achieve these things. And so to stay accountable, I find really interesting in a very individualistic time or society that we're in, because you're accountable to yourself. And that's why I think it's so easy to just let go. It's like, well, I don't care what me does. I like that guy, or I don't like that guy. And so joining the Highrise, at the beginning, you say, well, I'm here because I want this. And the team helps you kind of articulate that, by the way. You might not know exactly why I'm here. I want to be better. Or I have a problem coming up. So they help you articulate it, first of all. And, what's measured, it gets managed. It's kind of one of those business expressions where you're actually taking a look at how are you doing with the goal? Have you defined what you want? It's hard to do it on your own sometimes, maybe all the time. And so Highrise helps because not only do you have a team that is there to just ask you the question, they're not going to get mad at you if you're not following through. These are all individuals as well. You've paid the money to be there. You're still yourself. But the reminders are helpful. Seeing other people work through their struggles kind of makes you feel a little bit like, okay, it's not so bad if I slip up or if I'm not making the progress I think I should be making. Also, the key thing about Highrise for me was that it was spread very comfortably over 6 months. So there's a lot of space for you to just kind of absorb by osmosis. I mean, the first 3 or 4 weeks, I would forget everything that I had learned, or at least I thought I had forgotten, because, I just got back to my life as soon as I left the meeting. But over time, just through almost like osmosis or just the repetition and practice, I'm here at the end of 6 months, remembering things now from the first week because I had to return to it. And so I can look back after 6 months and say, I thought that I wasn't really going very fast in the early weeks. But now I realize that, this was all a compounding effect where now that because I had those 6 months of people, reminding me of practicing things, working through things, I have remained accountable to my goals. And it was easy. So that's how Highrise helped me. I thought that Highrise I had a good sense going into Highrise what it was going to be like, but I was very pleased and impressed by how it was structured. So it wasn't like my previous experience with coaching where I would walk in, kind of vent about my problems, get sometimes mostly good advice or felt good advice, and then just come back and continue to talk. Kind of like going to a therapist to continue your mental health. What Highrise was, I actually found rarely was I complaining about specific issues in my life. I might be bringing up examples to help explore a topic, but what was really happening was I was building a sense of who I am, an understanding of the way I operate, my challenges, my strengths. I was learning frameworks about how to utilize my strengths, to engage with other people in a way that was productive and helpful. And also, I just found that it wasn't as intensive, which at first I thought might be a bad thing. It was actually more, I won't say passive, it was more just, it was easy to go through and feel like I'm learning things here, but it's actually enjoyable. And I don't feel like I've got another homework task to do or another responsibility. It was something that I could come to and then and grow in a way that suited my busy life. It didn't just add another burden. It was actually something that really made me feel like it was growing without interfering with the rest of my life.
By the way, I think it still captured your track, even though I fell out for a second. Okay. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate you sharing your experience with everybody here today. We'll drop your LinkedIn link in the comment, in the description if anybody wants to get in touch, etc. But thanks
Absolutely.
again for your time and for sharing your experience.
That was my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Andrew.